If success wasn't measured in dollars, but in impact, in lives changed, communities built, and purpose lived out every single day. Welcome to In It for the Honey. I'm Sarah Munoz, and this is the podcast for entrepreneurs who do what they do for more than the money. Today, I'm talking with Kelly Michael Stewart, who took his passion for films and turned it into a festival. We're diving into why he made this leap, what keeps him going, and what you need to do if you're thinking about doing the same. Welcome, Kelly. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us, Kelly, how did this all start?
Well, it started as a passion for film writing. In maybe 2010, I was doing a lot of film writing in the city. I was writing for a couple of sites like Toronto Film Scene, a US one called Planet Fury that was around for a few years. And I also wrote for Fangoria magazine occasionally as well. So I was doing that for a bit, and that led to me getting the opportunity to host my own movie nights. I had a thing called Fright Nights at the Projection Booth that happened at Grindhouse Cinema on the east end of the city. It's one of the oldest silent houses in Toronto, still standing. I did that for a year, and did really well, and we had some really big crowds. But it was a kind of an eclectic mix of just whatever I felt like programming. I was doing films like Battle Royale, or the first one I ever did was a Boris Karloff film from the 1930s, and that was my first one I played. So it was just a mix. But during that year, I started getting more exposed to Canadian indie films, and we had a screening during that year that did really well, and then we started adding more. What really triggered the festival to start was I was just trying to have a weekend of Canadian films. In 2012, the film scene in Canada had two options if you had a film that was coming out, either Toronto After Dark in Toronto or Fantasia in Montreal. And because they're international festivals, they only play so many Canadian feature films. So a whole bunch of filmmakers who didn't get into those festivals that year came to me and, well, I have nowhere to show it. And so I thought, I had about 5 films I could play. And so I didn't have a programming team. I didn't have a festival yet. It was just going to be a weekend event. So the tagline was going to be Fright Nights, and the tagline would be Blood in the Snow Weekend. And someone suggested that sounded like a film festival, and I went, okay, sure. The whole thing happened so quickly, and within about 8 weeks, the whole thing came together. It was so fast. And I'm really glad that it happened that way, because if I overthought it, I might not have done it. I was in it so quickly, and then I had the first year under my belt before I even realized it, and it was successful. So I already had a success under me before even realizing what it would entail.
So let's define what Blood in the Snow is today. It is a Canadian film festival, but tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so then once we got going with the festival, then we actually brought on a programming team and with different volunteers, and we moved it to the Carlton Cinema here in Toronto. And that was in 2013, and that's the year that it really became like, hey, this is a real festival. And those days we had an artist alley where vendors could be there and sell their goods. We were about a 3-day program. We didn't have any industry component, but because we're all Canadian, that's the thing I have to stress, is that it's an all Canadian festival. We were noticing that filmmakers were coming to the festival and meeting other filmmakers and then doing business or working together. So I would invariably have a Q&A with somebody on stage, and I would go, okay, how did you this project come about? And they're like, well, actually, I met them at your festival last year. And then that's kind of that. So we became a hub for entrepreneurship and for networking and all those kinds of things just organically for many, many years. So as the festival evolved, we realized it wasn't just the film cinephile horror audience. In fact, I would say the majority were more people that were in the film industry. The people that tend to support Canadian film are already in the industry. That's good. I think that's very common. I think independent authors support other independent authors and so forth. So I think it's a lot of you support your own. In 2018, we started our Deadly Exposure Industry Conference. And so we formalized that and have that in conjunction with our festival. So to this day, during the daytime, we have a whole industry conference that goes the entire 6 days. We're up 6 days now. It goes the entire week of the festival at one location. And then in the evening, it switches to where we're at now, is at the Isabel Bader Theater in the evening. So in a way, we're kind of running 2 events at the same time.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It sounds like you've really leaned into what the market was telling you was needed. So you had a passion, which was film writing. You needed an outlet back in 2012. It was a weekend event. And by 2013, you weren't the only one that needed an outlet. People came to you.
Yeah, absolutely. They were, I mean, like for For submitting their films, you mean, and stuff like that? Or like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
it sounds like you were getting the overflow. There was no place for these Canadian filmmakers, but they came to you. You ended up attracting, you were a magnet, whether you wanted to be or not,
Hmm.
and almost pushed into this.
Yeah. And then I think the other thing that was happening at that same time too was I was, besides being a film writer in those early years, I was looking at myself more as a film producer. So I actually produced a couple of films around that. One called One More for the Road. It's a short film, and then I did an anthology feature that's behind me here called Late Night Double Feature. And it was actually directed by BITS alumni, all the people that were in the festival, even some of our programmers at the time did cameos in the in the film. So it was very much. Even though it wasn't officially made by Blood in the Snow, it was kind of like a Blood in the Snow. I can't really separate the two. And both of them did quite well. Late Night aired on Hulu, and we had a physical release of it, which is not too common. One More for the Road probably did about 35 festivals, won a few awards, and so actually got distribution too. It got played on bus lines and things like that. So it actually did quite well, and but there was also a lot of struggles too with it. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is that the struggles that I had with making my first feature, and not so much making it but putting it out into the marketplace, really informed my point of view and passion and perspective for helping filmmakers on the business side of it. Because one thing about the industry conference is that it's very aimed at filmmakers, the business side of it. It's not so much about, we don't really have things about filmmaking. It's more about distribution and getting funding and all that kind of stuff. This year we had a legal panel. We've had people come in and talk about insurance. We had a master class that the producer cinematography came in and talked about just from A to Z of how to make a movie, and really get into the bare bones of what was happening. Because the thing I realized was that it was all designed around things that I wish I had done. I didn't get a lawyer. I didn't get insurance. I didn't, there's so many things that I have access to and understand now. And even just understanding how the distribution process works, I have a much better understanding of it than even when I was running my festival. When I made the movie, I didn't fully understand it in retrospect. So a lot of it's been formed by the things that I wish I'd done or wish I had or wish I knew about at the time. So, don't make mistakes I made. But I think that happens. I don't feel bad about it. I mean, I think that happens with every single first-time producer or director. They make mistakes and they have to learn from it. So what we try and do is get ahead of that.
Well, it sounds like you're taking your experience and translating it into actionable information for a generation of individuals or people who are converting their careers into.
Very much, yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about the industry conference, which you've called Deadly Exposure. Now it's a 3-day event, and does it happen before or after the Blood in the Snow festival?
Literally during, and I should add within that, we have a development lab. So I'll walk you through the week. The first 3 days during the day at the Transat Club, we have a development lab where we pick 12 projects from across Canada. We have an amazing development coordinator, Vanessa Magic, who was in the lab 2 years ago, and she has a jury, and they pick 12 projects, and then they will come to the festival and pitch their projects in front of industry professionals to get their films hopefully financed. And we have a lot of those classes I was talking about on different topics, because the assumption is all those projects are going to go to camera in the next 12 months. So we have what we call micro panels where we talk to them specifically, here's what you need to know if you're going to make your film. We give them $10,000 in-kind rental from Sunbelt, which is the main equipment rental company in Canada. So we give that in kind to get kind of like their first dollar in for the project. So we do that for 3 days. And then after that, we switch it for the more public event, which is called Deadly Exposure. And we have these things called industry roundtables where people will go from table to table every 20 minutes, almost like speed dating, and just meet different companies. So in a 2-day period, you'll meet 24 different companies and different individuals that can help you with your business. Some of them are sales agents, some of them are distributors. We'll have everyone from Hollywood Suite to Crave to Super Channel to some of the main distributors like Vortex and Raven Banner, Black Fawn, that will come in and speak to everyone and just get a sense of like what's available. Then the last day and a half, we switch it to industry panels that we have on a variety of topics. And that goes on until 4 or 5 o'clock every day. And then we run over to the theater, and then we have screenings. And then we actually transform the Transat Club to our after parties. So my day is I'll go over at 5 o'clock to the theater, make sure everything's all set up for everyone. And then, 2 screenings at 7 and 9:30. Then I'm back over at the Transat Club for our after parties each night, and then do it all over again for 6 days. For long
And
days.
that sounds pretty intense. And so talk to us a little bit about what planning for those 6 days looks like.
Mhm. Yeah, that's where the passion thing comes in, because it really does take the whole year already. As we're recording this in December 2020, we just wrapped up the festival. At the same time, I'm wrapping up. We have to do grant responses to just tell our funders how we did, and then we also have to pay everyone. But at the same time, I've booked the dates already for next year. I'm talking about the artwork for next year. I'm talking about who we're going to rehire or hire new people, those kinds of things. Any kind of major programming changes, all those kinds of things are all happening right away. There's a little bit of downtime, but it's not. It's the degrees of downtime. There's never a full stop. I've actually, to put it in perspective, I have not had an active event being planned since December 2011. There's not a single moment where there hasn't been something coming up, because we didn't stop during the pandemic either, right? I should mention we went to Super Channel in 2020 when the pandemic happened. We were on there for 2020, so we went right into that, and then did hybrid in 21 and 22. So it's kind of like it's a marathon, and it's funny. It never occurred to me when I started hosting these monthly events that there would not be a moment where I'm not hosting either that or this. But it's a burden that I like, and this is where the passion thing comes in. If you're just doing it for the paycheck, or you were just doing it to advance my own personal brand or person or something like that, that only goes so far. You're only going to do that. I've seen people do that, and they only do it for a couple of years, and then they lose interest. Because if your passion is to go do something else, then you'll eventually go do something else. So you have to either be all in or just not, because you can't be stagnant. You always have to be reassessing what you're doing for the festival and what's working, what's not working. If you go on cruise control, then you kind of lose that momentum, I think.
And when you say that it takes all year, this isn't what you're doing full time now, is it?
No, no, no. I work in legal marketing, which is I do that. I work for a great firm, Faskin, with a great team, and it's great. And what's really amazing about that is that a lot of there's been a lot of transferable skills. I've spoken to the events team on how we've done things for our events, because in legal marketing, we work with many different offices and different kinds of events, and it's amazing how many things that we do in the legal space that actually transfers over. It's kind of being a good salesperson. You're like, if you can sell a vacuum, you could probably go sell a stapler. It kind of works a little bit like that. So there's a lot of things that I transfer over.
I think that's amazing. I'd love to hear a little bit about some of the challenges you've had, maybe at the different stages. So it sounds like the beginning, you were stumbling into the world of a film festival and into the world of creating value for filmmakers in Canada. Now it sounds like you've really understood through your own experiences, through your own productions, what someone could benefit from.
Mm-hmm.
The legal advice, the insurance, having industry professionals look at their work, perhaps critique them as well, because you receive a lot of submissions and you provide feedback for the submissions that you receive as well. So all of that comes with a series of challenges, and at different stages in the festival's life and in like your passion career, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge I had basically, and this is where both was an advantage and disadvantage. The disadvantage of going in blind to start a festival is that I had to learn as I was going. And there's a great little moment in a Wallace and Gromit cartoon, the claymation, where they're putting the tracks on there as the train's going on. And that's the best way to describe how this 14 years has been doing the festival, is that you're putting the track in front of the train as the train's going. And so you don't have a chance to take a break and go, okay, how do you do this? And the one thing I didn't do that other people have done, that I've never worked for any other festival. I didn't do any research. I didn't go work for another festival for 3-4 years to see how they did it. But at the same time, though, every festival is different, and I couldn't tell you if that would have been a benefit or not. We were kind of learning as we go. And so the challenge was just kind of figuring out blindly like how this is going to work. And the other part of it too was we went through a period where, for me personally, it was hard to keep up with that growth, because there was a period where I was producing my movies and then also doing the film festival at the same time. And I had to make a life choice after the feature had wrapped up and done the distro thing, and played all the festivals. I realized that I had to say to myself, am I a film writer? Am I a producer? Am I a festival director? And I decided I'm going to be a festival director. I'm going to put all in on that. And that's the thing too, is you can't spread yourself too thin because there's so many areas within the festival. I think the reason why it's satisfying for me, because I'm not just running a film festival, I'm running an industry conference. I'm also working with the art, with our art designer, Small Dog Design, doing that. So there's a creativity aspect to it. And so I get a lot of stimuli from different areas, because it's not just like one thing. But it was a challenge there, especially I would say between 2015 and 2019. Because we're doing a lot of growth, and there's a lot of areas that I'm strong in, but there's other areas that it took me a long time to really get my head around bookkeeping and just understanding that. And I have a fantastic bookkeeper and I have a fantastic accountant, but it took going through a few people and just understanding. Like I was the shoebox with receipts that have been piled up for 2 years, handing, go, here you go. And then now I'm like reconciling every month and doing that, and that took a while. It's really just in the last couple of years I've really embraced the business side of it and enjoying that more. I looked at that as a burden I'm doing the festival, now I have to do the bookkeeping, I have to do the grant stuff. I was looking at that stuff as a burden, and now I'm looking at it much more as a challenge, and I get a lot of satisfaction of like, oh wow, I really have it down now, like I have it figured out, and I understand the business side of it. Even though there's not a lot of revenue, it's a nonprofit organization, but there is a lot of moving parts to it. And so I think that was the thing I had to grapple with the most, to kind of play catch up, because there was a few years where I couldn't keep up with it. I was way behind on a lot of different things.
You spoke about making a decision about which hat you were going to wear, whether you were going to be a festival director, a producer, or something else. How did you run through that internally? Like what helped weigh that decision? Because like you said, you can't spread yourself too thin. You took your passion for film, fell into festival directing, but still kept your own passion projects and creativity going. But at some point you were faced with the crossroads. What made you invest more in one direction than the other? What helped you get there?
Well, two things. When you're when you're a film producer, you're always you either have to put up the money or you have to find the money. And it's very hard to be a film producer without putting some money into it yourself, just logistics and just keeping the lights on. And so it really came down to, frankly, a success thing. I'm very lucky that the festival has been successful since day one, even though we much bigger than we were in 2012. We were successful right out of the gate, and so it wasn't really that hard of a decision, especially from a business perspective, because the festival has always been able to at least pay for itself from day one. We've never in 14 years ever had a loss. We've always had enough. Everything's been paid over. We have enough for the deposit next year. Those kinds of things. So we've always been kind of like good there. So it's not going to be a burden on me that way. It wasn't something like I'm going to have to look, because I've seen this happen where I've known people who have started festivals and they've gone into debt running the festival, and it, just like a film, and they've gone into debt. I've known people who literally have gone like bankruptcy because they've put in so much money trying to get the thing going. But I was lucky that there was very little overhead at the very beginning. And then so the overhead just came as the funding came in, as ticket sales went up, as film submissions went up. We just so when we get a little bit more, we're like, oh, okay, now we can add this. Okay, now we can add this. Now we can actually hire, because for example, we hire a proper events company that does our volunteer coordinator, does our volunteer coordinating to all the different volunteers. 5 years ago, we could never afford that, and that came with the growth of the festival. So we've been able to hire more professional people that understand that. I would describe the team earlier, nothing against the early team, was just more eager volunteers and like that too. And so like that, but as the festival's grown, we've been able to do that. But back to like how it all kind of was started. It wasn't really that hard of a decision, because the festival was really right out of the gate. I knew we had something special. Like, it was just like nobody else is doing this. And the reality is too, if you're producing a feature film, you want to make yourself distinct in the marketplace. Even though there's tons of festivals, there was no one doing a festival quite like ours, especially at the time. And so there's been a few that have been inspired by us and have done things across Canada. But certainly at the time, there was nobody doing what we were doing in our way. To this day, I don't think there's many only Canadian genre festivals in Canada. We're rare. Certainly nobody's doing a development lab the way we're doing it, and so I thought that's unique. So there's a lot of unique things. Whereas if you're a film producer, you're kind of like one of hundreds and thousands of other producers. It's harder to distinguish yourself in the marketplace. So I don't think in the end it was that hard of a choice. I just kind of like realized that producing is a young person's game. it's like it's a lot. No, it takes a lot. It took a lot. I mean, even as much as how hard it is to run the festival, it's not anywhere close to making a feature film.
Well, I think it's important to distinguish that for you, it's not difficult to run a festival, but I think that you have also a unique skill set, while as perhaps for somebody else who is a producer, it could be a challenge for them to coordinate over 6 days the number of activities that Blood in the Snow puts on with the industry conference, with the development lab. Not everyone has that skill set. And I think that there's something to be said there. So what I see from what you've shared and from what I know as well about Blood in the Snow is you've created a space for Canadian filmmakers to get their foot in the door. And I think that's one of the things that makes the festival unique. And if it's not through the showings, it's through the industry expertise that you're putting together.
Yeah. But also too, I think that's all true. Thank you. I think what also is true is I think I've seen other people start festivals where it's too ambitious out of the gate. I'll see them where they'll kind of pick. I've seen this with not even just with festivals, but like for like conventions, where they'll pick a space that just way they'll do like the Metro Convention Center. I saw one event that did that 6 7 years ago, and there was hardly any vendors at it, hardly any attendance, and they're just way over their head. And I've also been to festivals where they're playing 70 films in all these different rooms at the same time, that all have all this ambition. And the thing I've learned too is that you got to do incremental increases. There's been a lot of times where even myself, I've gone, okay, wait a minute, maybe we've gone a little too far here. Let's pull back a little bit, and kind of like let it kind of grow. So what we're talking about now, when I say this, it's the first year, it was literally 6 different screenings, no after parties, and no industry. So that was over 3 days. So it started off so small. And then even when we moved to the Carlton, again, it was just over 3 days. I think the big thing we added that year was the Artist Alley, but we added a few tables, and that was it. And that was kind of really the only thing that we added too new to that kind of got to. So I think what I'm saying is, even when we went from 3 days to 6 days, we went to 4 days. And then we added, and then even when we went to 6 days, the first couple of days we had nothing going on during the day, just at night. And so there's been kind of these incremental changes, and so we've kind of done it like that. And that's probably the biggest mistake I've seen other events and festivals do, is that they grow too quickly. And Sarah, my partner, who helps me run the festival, she's the one who said to me, I was wanting to go to 9 days a few years ago, and she's like, no, we got to fill this. We have 13 screenings. Let's fill those first. Then we'll look at maybe expanding it. She was right. And so we've been in the same. That's the other thing too. It's not just the amount of screenings. We're at 13 screenings now. We're also at a very large theater. It's a 500-seat theater, whereas when we're at the Carlton, it was 120. So we have a lot more seats to fill. So it takes time to build up that audience, to grow that before you can move even bigger or more screenings. So we're just focusing. We haven't changed the 13 screen. Even though we've added little things, maybe have this kind of party, this kind of thing going on. They're all kind of like small, or maybe some of the programming, like what content. For example, we switched one of our shorts program to a sci-fi program this year. Like little things. It doesn't change logistically what we're doing at all. It's just a new thing that we've added. So I think we've done that and done incremental growth kind of thing, where you balance that.
I'm hearing that through all of this, this is the advice for anyone who's looking to start their own film festival. So what I've heard is you need a good bookkeeper or someone who's good at the business side of things, because there is a business side. You need to grow the festival, but grow with the market. I mean, you can still have a target like the Metro Toronto Convention Center, which is a massive space, but start small and grow. And I think a third piece of advice, cash flow. It sounds like you guys have mastered the cash flow. So keeping in mind it is still a not-for-profit, there still are funds that need to come in and go out, and you're about where you put that money, because it sounds like uh, it's a marathon. You're looking for something in longevity, not something that goes viral or is super popular 1 year or for 2 years or for 4 years. It sounds like you're really trying to build a legacy, something useful for for a long time.
Well, I'll tell you that's where that really affected other festivals and frankly just other businesses too was the pandemic, and that's when you realize who was solvent and who wasn't. Is if when the pandemic hit in 2020 in March, if you were out of business or broke by June, then you probably were not in a good position already. And what's funny is the reason why I was so careful with the money actually interestingly had to do a lot to do with the weather, because my assumption because back when the pandemic hit, we were at the Royal Cinema, and in that theater, you have to line up outside. Our festival is the end of November, and you can get pretty cold by then. So my worry was, and this is the God honest truth, my worry was we were going to have the biggest snowstorm ever, and we were going to get wiped out that year financially because of people didn't show up. So that was always in the back of my head. I'm like, oh, we're going to get that. We're going to get one of these years. We're going to get that storm. And we never did, actually. Oh, I mean, it was cold days. Never anything that was detrimental to attendance. But I think it was always in my head. And the other trick that I learned was just much like you would with a personal investment portfolio, you have to diversify the funding that you have for the festival. So for example, a certain amount of the festival's funding comes from grants. A certain amount of it comes from ticket sales. A certain amount of it comes from film submissions, and a certain amount of it comes from sponsorship. And we have like that pie of how you have so much in bonds and so much in equity. A festival or organization runs the same way, where you have a little bit in each, so that if sponsorship goes down one year, then maybe you can do some additional marketing to help get ticket sales up, and that can make up for it. Or maybe you can apply for another grant, and that can make up for it. Or maybe you might lose a grant, and I've seen festivals suffer that. I know one case where a pretty major festival lost a sponsor years back, and they literally had to put the festival on hold for 2 years because they were so dependent on that one sponsor paying the bills. That was one thing I learned as I went. Even though I didn't do research when I started the festival, as I was going, I was looking around. Went to a lot of festivals, both for my own film and just as a supporter. And I would take notes and go, okay, that's working, that's not working. Even to this day, I'll go to TIFF, especially their industry conference, and go, oh, I like how they did the lighting there and just how they did the signage. Oh, I should do that too. Oh, there's a charging station. We got to do a charging station. I'll see little details like that. So that's kind of, I think, kept us in the black, so that when the pandemic hit, we were pretty well prepared. So when that things happened.
It's so interesting. I think other people would have said, let's change the festival dates instead of worry year over year about whether we're going to get really cold weather and not have people show up.
Yeah. Well, that was debated. That was debated. The problem is that, and this is the caution for anyone who's listening to this might want to start a festival. It is a very crowded marketplace. Like, it was crowded in 2012. It's really crowded now. On average, in Toronto especially, there's about on average, there's about three. Nobody actually knows how many festivals are in Toronto, for starters. That's how many there are. On average, there's about three every weekend. So a lot of the issue for us was that, and this is why it all happened by circumstance. It happened in November because that just happened to be when my next Fright Nights was going to be. I had one in September, and this was going to be in November. I usually had them about once a month, and so that was just the next event. There was no big plan. So there was a debate when that first year was over. Oh, should we have it at a different time? But I couldn't really find a window because we didn't want to conflict with Halloween events and Toronto After Dark that happens in October. There's TIFF in September. Summer months can be a little bit harder. Most of the festivals are like April to June. That was like a really busy month and stuff like that too. And then we don't want to be on during Canadian Film Fest, which is the non-genre festival that kind of happens in around April. So we didn't want to conflict with that. And then January, February is too cold. There just wasn't really anywhere to move it to. And so we just gotten used to, okay, I guess we'll have it in November. But it's worked out fine. It works out really good. I think it's worked out nicely because we don't compete with Halloween stuff in October. And we just kind of extend Halloween, I guess, into November in a way. It's just kind of funny that.
Very cool. Do you have some success stories that you could share about maybe people who have come to the festival or individuals who have written you years later to thank you? Because Blood in the Snow is having an impact in a number of people's lives. And I do remember one or two stories. I don't know which ones you'd like to share, but there was one that you did share with me about, I believe it was a filmmaker coming from the Northwest Territories. Does that ring a
Oh,
bell?
yeah, it was actually it was a group of young Indigenous school children, and that was a very inspirational moment. 8 years ago now. Wow. They had a film called Frostbitten. It was basically just outside Yellowknife. There's a school, a wonderful school there that that uses interactive learning to teach. So they use the part of their school project is to make a short film. So they actually it was made for another festival called the Dead North Film Festival, which I've attended in Yellowknife. Doesn't exist anymore, but they're a fantastic group. And they would just and so they made that film for that, and then they got the idea of submitting it to Blood in the Snow, and our programmers loved it. We had them, I think it was in 2018. We had them come down to. It was made by the whole class, but two of the main directors, along with the principal, she came down, and the whole town raised money for them to come down to screen their film, and we actually ended up getting them on CBC Morning, and then so people were actually coming to the theater going, "I'm here to see the Frostbite," and like there's these kids that made this wonderful short film, and it's about by the way, it's a puppet, and it's a creature that if you don't bundle up the frostbite monster will get you, because like you're from exposure. So it's like a PSA a little bit like that too. So it was really funny. So we had that, got a huge response, and then I was blessed to be invited up to that Dead North Film Festival just before the pandemic in February 2020, and I actually got to go visit them at the school, and they actually did a screening of two more films that they did, and they actually made their own badges, and they screened two of the short films that they did that year. We selected those two films as well, and that was the year that we were on Super Channel, so they aired across Canada to 500,000 people across Canada on Super Channel. So that was a wonderful wonderful moment for them, and then that story actually ended up being a chapter in a book. There was Tom Erst, who used to host Saturday Night Movies in Toronto. He has a book of 1001 stories or trivia, things like that, about film in Canada. And he asked me for a story, and I gave him that story, and it's a whole chapter in it. You can get it on Amazon. Like that tells you the whole story of what happened to that. So that was a really special moment.
I'm sure when you started in 2012, you never thought you'd be helping grow eight school children's lives from Yellowknife.
Yeah. It was fantastic. No, I was definitely on a personal level. I would say if I had to pick my favorite moment, that was definitely it. But besides that too, just on a more business level, some of the success stories we just had this year, a development lab I was talking about, we had a filmmaker pitch for a project 2 years ago, and it was picked up, like the advisors that were hearing the pitch literally picked up the project then. The film was made. It premiered at Fantasia earlier this year. It's been released and it played at our festival last month, and we had the filmmaker come back and do a lecture to the people in the lab, and she was literally standing in the spot that she pitched the project to get the film funded, and said, "I pitched it right here in this room, you can too, and I'm screening it tonight." That was a big win, so that was really cool.
That's fantastic. I think what you're doing for Canadian filmmakers is amazing. And I know that the pandemic really changed the style of things. Where are things at now? And what are some of your aspirations for the festival as we head into 2026 and the years from now? What's on the roadmap?
That's a good question. I think 2026 will be generally a stay of the course. We might change some of the programming around and kind of tweak a few things. We went through a lot of staffing changes last year, so we didn't want to change things up too much. I think some of the people who are running that, Vanessa, who I mentioned before, and Emily, who runs her industry coordinator, I'm sure they're going to have their own ideas of some new stuff that we'll have this year. I think we have anything too hugely new that's going to happen this year. I think we're going into our 15th year, so I think we're going to be doing some things to celebrate 15 years. So I'm not too sure yet. We'll see what happens. It's hard. It's one of those things though too. You can't even predict too much, because I remember even with the pandemic, for example, nobody knew everything would be, when we closed everything, we didn't know it was going to stay closed through the fall. So I was pushing through, like, we're going to have it, hell or high water, we're going to have it in person that fall. And then I got how it went online. I didn't even go looking for it. And sometimes you just have to be open to opportunities as they come. Because I think one of the themes that you're seeing here is that I never planned a festival in the first place. I never planned an industry conference. Even the lab kind of happened by circumstance. And then all these other things that happened, like, going up to Yellowknife. You couldn't plan that. But you have to be open to those opportunities when it happens. You have to be available. Like, I'm kind of always trying to be very engaged with filmmakers and have conversations with them when I go to TIFF. I try and have as many meetings as I can with just filmmakers to find out what they're doing. So the thing is, though, too, is I don't necessarily know what we're going to do new in the next couple of years, but I just want to be open to those opportunities. So what I was getting at was with Super Channel was I had the head of Vortex Films, who used to be the head of Super Channel, contact me and said, since everything's going online this year, how about you talk to Super Channel about moving the festival online? And then he introduced me to Super Channel, and we had a great conversation. They were like, you can do whatever you want. So I ended up on TV every night at 9 p.m. Eastern, introducing these movies across Canada. And we had it all online for that year. And then that led to broadcast deals for most of the films that played. And then we did a hybrid in 21 22. So it was like, I couldn't have planned that either, too. Like, it just happened. And what was incredible was that by being open to that opportunity, it really put us into a new level. We couldn't afford the theater that we have now without that growth that we had during the pandemic. It's so strange to say that we had growth during the pandemic, but we did. If you were to look at where we were for size in 2019 and in 2022, it's night and day. I would say we were 5 times as big when the pandemic was over because of the sponsorship that we got from Super Channel, the exposure we got, that led to other funders, that led to other sponsorship, just general just our general awareness in the marketplace, kind of like that too. All happened because during that. So we went through tremendous growth in awareness during those years, and it continues. It's been snowballing ever since. And it's kind of like I thought we were doing well in 2019, but then when I look at the numbers, I'm like, oh wow, it's not even like it's quite substantial. So, if I hadn't been open-minded enough, because at first I was like, oh, I don't really want to have a festival online. That's not what I signed on to do. But there was a little voice in my head, keep an open mind here, Kelly, you don't know what's going to happen. And so I heard it out and like, okay, let's see what happens here. And I'm the smartest thing we ever did.
I think that's incredible. I think it really speaks volumes to approaching a project, a business, a company, a festival from a place of passion and openness. And your concerns around the pandemic and the possibility of it not being in person, I don't hear you speaking about worry of being shut down or acting out of fear, which tends to happen when we're not running from a place of passion or from love. It sounds like you really love what you do, and the opportunities come to you because of that.
One thing that I did too that kind of make it more exciting for myself, because I think the biggest worry I had about being on Super Channel was it was essentially a TV show. So it was just like, it's not all the things. I thought to myself, all the things that I like, all the trappings of the festival. I like how we all have badges. I like how we have a program booklet. But there's all these little details that we have. Like we give these filmmaker buttons to all the filmmakers that are on stage. And the thing that bothered me the most was just, oh, we're not doing that. And what I decided to do was, let's just do it anyway. Even though there was no economic reason to do it and cost us money to do it, we still did a limited run, I think 300 copies of our program book. I still did a printed program booklet. I still got badges made so that if anyone who ordered any merch, because we had a whole merch store online, if you could order, we did a hashtag show us your bits. There's actually unboxing videos on YouTube of people opening their stuff. And we put in little spiders and stickers and stuff like that, and like Halloween stuff in there. So they would open up and they have their shirt, and they would get a badge, and then they would get a program booklet and some buttons and stuff like that, so that they could wear that while they're watching it on Super Channel. So, and for me, from an organizer perspective, it made me still feel like we're having the real festival. And it also created a social media opportunity too, a marketing opportunity to market this stuff still. Part of what the point of a festival is too, I should mention, is the social media marketing. Not for our festival, but for the filmmakers. What's just as important as the screening is the red carpet photos. They want those photos. If you go on our Instagram, we've been posting literally hundreds of photos of everyone at that. And that is good for the filmmakers for their marketing it. And I didn't want them to lose that by having on Super Channel. So we're kind of so we still created those opportunities online, and then we hosted our own Q&As after the screenings that were online that we put on Super Channel, and then we put them online as well. So we did basically, I just checked off every single thing that we did and tried to figure out some kind of online equivalent. But there was no economic reason to do it. It was just simply like I needed to scratch that itch. I'm like, it's not going to feel, I need to do all the things that makes it feel like a film festival. So even though that we probably spent a few $1,000s extra on that, I'm really glad that we did, because it felt like a real event still.
maybe from a bottom line for that year perspective, it didn't make sense, but from a long-term perspective, it definitely did. You delighted your community base. You kept the spirit alive. Those years were not easy years for a lot of people, so I can only imagine how delighted they were to open a
Yeah,
box, see all of those. Know that there was a human behind that box as well, because I think that's the other thing is how did you manage those boxing of 300 or so items?
our apartment, we have photos of stacks of boxes. Sarah did a lot of all the packaging of it. She was the one who got all the little spiders and things like stickers and stuff like that to put in there, and we had fun decorating them. But yeah, we've got hilarious photos. And we're in a small one-bedroom apartment, and our whole living room was just stacks and stacks of these bags and boxes and stuff like that that we're mailing. Oh, we mailed all across the country. I don't even know how many we sent out, but it was probably well over 100 boxes that we sent all over the place. And some of the unboxing were hilarious because don't forget we're dealing with filmmakers, so they're creative people. So we had people
Wow.
took little dinosaurs, and the dinosaurs are opening up the box like skeleton dinosaurs, and they're opening it up and they do almost like a stop motion thing where they're opening up the box and pulling the shirt out with the dinosaurs, but the dinosaurs are doing it. Like just things like that. It was just like you couldn't have anticipated because that's the thing too. You're around creative people, so the creative people are coming up with their own creative ideas. The other ththing is too, you're right. It might not have been for the bottom line for that year, but long term, because I do know some festivals really struggled with is when they did reopen, say they've been closed for, because we did a hybrid in 2021. A lot of festivals didn't start up again until 2022. And when they started in 2022, they had lost a lot of their audience, whereas we didn't. It took a while to grow again, but we didn't recede. We kind of left off where we left off, like from attendance point of view. We were much more funded and all those kinds of things. But we didn't have the setback that a lot of festivals had, where they're like, oh, we have to start all over again. Because again, we didn't have that break. It would have been great for me from a workload perspective, taking a year. Because there's times like Kelly, you had a chance to take a year off, and this is probably the only chance you'll ever get to do that until you retire from this. But it's like, but it was still worth it. It was like, to have it. But yeah, that definitely made a difference.
That definitely did. We'll head into one of the last questions I have for you, which is how can people follow your work or get involved with Blood in the Snow or the Blood in the Snow community?
Yeah, we have two websites, bloodinthesnow.ca and deadlyexposure.ca. And that's where you can find our main information. We also have, if you want to find out about, you can just search for Blood in the Snow on Film Freeway if you're interested in submitting a project. On our websites too, there is also a volunteer form if people want to volunteer for the festival. You just scroll down to the bottom, and there'll be a form there. You can click on that. If you want to follow us on social media, we're extremely active on social media, especially Instagram and Facebook these days. Just Bits Film Fest is the name. It's the same across all our platforms. You can follow us on there, and I think you'll get a really good sense of the community by even just looking at our photos and things like that. You'll get a sense of that. But we're always looking to have new people join or attend the festival.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Yeah,
So if this conversation resonated with you, subscribe to In It for the Honey and share this episode with someone considering their own leap into their purpose-driven work. And you can find all of the links to Blood in the Snow and Kelly's work in the show notes below. So with that, thank you, Kelly, for joining,
thank you.
and keep doing it for the honey. The rest always follows.